Michael, obviously season on the line on Sunday. I guess the first question will be health and fitness wise, how have all the girls pulled up after their first leg in Gosford? Do you have a full squad to choose from?
Yes, we definitely do have a full squad, 23 fit players. So yeah, it's been good to get Lourdes back. She was someone that we probably could have played last weekend, but decided to go on the more cautious side and get her ready for this week. So she'll be up for selection and has trained really well this week. Speckmeyer, similar. We probably could have pushed her to get minutes last week, but wanted to get the extra week of training into her, so she'll be ready to play off the bench. She's probably got a good 45 minutes into her. And then, yeah, Holly, obviously similar, that we didn't really want to risk. She could have started last week, but felt playing limited minutes would probably be better for her, so she'll be back in the starting lineup come Sunday.
So I guess getting the reinforcements in now, what do you need to do on the park? What do you need to execute better to ensure that it's not a draw this time, it's not a defeat, you get the win and go into the grand final?
Look, there's a couple of things we identified from the match. I think overall we were probably slightly the better. I think we created a few more chances than them. But I felt they punished us a couple of times on the counter-attack. I think there was 4 or 5 really key moments that we didn't handle well enough. So they're definitely things, if they play the same formation, that we're more prepared to be able to block that and make sure that doesn't sort of get a good chance for them. So in terms of what we do and how we create, I think there's a couple of different ideas that we've sort of posed. But when you bring in players like Holly and Lourdes and Speckmeyer off the bench, you know, these are type of players that can create something out of nothing. So I think all in all, it's been a great week on the track, and yeah, we're just excited for the match.
Look, you mentioned there if the Mariners do the same things, and I guess one of the key tenets of the Mariners ever since they've re-entered the A-League Women has been their adaptability, their ability to show teams different looks and change up their tactics even mid-game. Do you anticipate to see a different look from the Mariners on Sunday?
Look, I think what they did worked, especially in the first, I would say, 70 minutes of the match. They probably, like I said, created a fair few counter-attack moments where normally teams don't do that against us, but their shape and how they inverted both of their wingers, we weren't expecting that. We were expecting one of them to do that, but not both. So that sort of caused a little bit of confusion with some of our players, who to jump, where to press. So we've clarified that. If they want to do the same thing, we're more prepared. If they throw something different, then we'll have to adapt and make those adjustments live on the pitch. But we had 66% of the ball. We're dominating majority of the time. I expect it to be similar around that 60%. So it's more what we do and how we can create, you know, instead of 5 or 6 chances, 8, 10 chances, and that hopefully enough to get the third goal, which would probably win us the match.
I guess, you know, with those stats in hand and coming off the sort of regular season that you've had, has that been the message to the playing group? As in, you know, you perform like you're capable of, you produce these numbers again, it's still in your hands, and, you know, you've got it within you to win this?
Yeah, definitely. Look, there's a fine line between confidence and complacency. We talk about it all the time. We are a super confident side, but we 100% respect the opposition and give them the respect that they deserve, and make sure we analyse and prepare and be ready for their strengths. Try and nullify it, but mainly try and focus on how we can break down potential weaknesses or how we can continue to get better in what we're good at, and more enhancing those type of areas. So all in all, we're in a good positive mood. The first leg, if you would have said to me before that we would have had, you know, 5 or 6 big chances to their 3 and we would have dominated the game in 66% possession, I probably would have taken that. But credit to them, I think they scored 2 really nice goals. You know, overall, probably a draw was a fair result. So we take the positives out of it. We learn from the few things that we made mistakes from. And I think we're better prepared tactically if a team in the future does do something like that against us. So it was a good learning opportunity for our group.
And you mentioned the Mariners did score some nice goals, but they also scored the first goal of the game, put your side in a deficit. we've seen your side overcome deficits in throughout this season and do so well. But I guess, forgive the silly question, but how important is it to not fall into a deficit this time around and make sure that in your efforts you're not having to overcome a 1-0 trail, a 1-0 lead?
Look, it has happened a few times, especially the first half of the season. I think what was really promising for me is how we quickly turned that around. And we were then going into the halftime break in the lead, where I think in the first half of the season, I think there was probably 5 or 6 moments we actually went into halftime losing 1-0. So I think there's a major shift in mentality and identifying the issues and able to then overcome that a lot quicker. But in the moment in the game is always difficult to give a clear indication of exactly what happens, especially in my post-match interviews. But analysing the game, basically the 20th minute, they have that one moment where we make a mistake on the halfway line and the girl does well to beat Stoddy. But other than that, we started the game really well. We're imposing and they didn't have a shot up until that 20th moment or even get close to having a shot. So I think the way we've been starting matches has been very positive. And yeah, like I mentioned previously, if we can just nullify those couple of free players that are floating that they were doing in the transition moments, then, that was a big weapon that will be more prepared for come this week.
I guess heading into the the second leg of a semi-final, scores 2-2. Are you practicing penalties at all this week? Do you have your shootout protocol ready to go?
Me personally, I have an idea. I'm not someone that is forcing the players to practice pens, but I will say that the last probably 6 weeks, every time in training or a small-sided game was a draw or it's a 50-50, I would give a pen. I would give a bit of a sudden death penalty shootout as a bit of a fun thing. But we've been doing that for probably 6 weeks now. So everyone's sort of getting their moments to practice, but not in a real I could go to pens. Let's practice pens. So it's more in an organic way for me. And we obviously have this semi-final, which could go to extra time. If we make the final, same. And then likewise, we have a semi-final in a couple of weeks as well in the Champions League that, could go to pens. So we have the players who are more comfortable, but it's important they get their rhythm. And that's why it's always important playing the second leg at home, because if it does go, we know the surface, we know the surrounding, we know the areas we're trying to hit. So it's that little 1% that might be the difference.
What school of coaching do you come from when it comes to penalty shootouts? Will you, if it comes to that, will you go to the players and ask them to put their hands up, or do you have a list of yours takers ready to go coming into the game?
I've already hinted to some of the players, if we did go to pens, would you be comfortable taking it? There's certain ones that I think that they have more belief, or they should have more belief in themselves. And they've been doing a couple of practice ones. But yeah, I'm sort of on the border. I have a guide, but then in the moment, you never quite know what subs you're making as well throughout the course of the match. But yeah, definitely have a guide. But when the moment comes, it's totally different. And the players that put their hand up are confident. You're probably going to lean towards those.
Well, on the subject of subs, 119th minute scores a tie. Is Bubs coming on, or?
Well, she's definitely telling me, I can do it. I'm a very good penalty taker, but so is Marles. So, they're both top keepers, but would probably keep it the same.
And you mentioned being at home there, and I guess this is a home game. It's being played at Casey Fields. You're not at Amy Park, so Casey Fields all the way out there in the southeast. Different conditions. It gets windy out there. A whole bunch of different conditions. How much of an advantage could that be, being at home and being familiar with Casey Fields as opposed to this game being at Amy Park?
I think it is. Round 3 or 4, I can't remember now when we played Central Coast exactly. Maybe it was round 3. We actually played at KC, so they've played here before. And that day, if I can remember correctly, was quite windy, and it can get quite windy, as you mentioned here. But obviously, we train on this every single day, so we're very, very familiar with the conditions here, so it's definitely an advantage.
And I guess, mate, you've spoken numerous times about targeting the treble at the start of the season. You all sat down, the players have talked about it. Has that continued into the finals? Have you continued to talk about the treble, or has the messaging shifted and it's just all about this current finals campaign right now?
So I've only spoken about the treble twice. Yeah, so it's not something that I continue to talk about. It's a goal of ours. Day one of preseason was talked about and presented to the players as a target. I'd already spoken to a lot of the players in the leadership, and they all wanted that as well. So that was day one of me introducing myself to the team, was a picture of the 3 trophies. That's our target. Then the other time that I've spoken about it was the first day after we came back from Perth, that we had won the first trophy. And I put a picture of the Premier's plate that we had won, highlighted, clear. The other 2 were still faded in the background because we still had to drive for that. Other than that, I haven't spoken about it with the players ever. So we're always focusing on what's next, how we can improve, the next action, how we can keep getting better, how we can keep getting smarter as individuals and as a collective, as a team. But in terms of speaking about the treble, it gets asked in my media interviews, and yes, that is a target, but it's definitely not something we're talking about.
That picture with the Premiership now in focus and the other 2 trophies still a bit blurry, is that in the dressing room? Where is that?
No. There's no picture anywhere about that. No, that was just...
So you put the picture up and then you took it down again?
Well, sorry, my first presentation, so when we do our, in our theatre that we have...
Oh, it was a slide.
It was one of the slides of many that is there, put up, and then clicked onto the next one and put to the back burner, and then focus on the things that I felt that we needed to talk about in that meeting.
Well, I guess then coming into this week, how much are you using the grand final as a carrot? And is that because you have often spoken about the next game, but the game after the next game is a pretty big one in this context. Are you using that as a carrot this week?
Not really. I think everyone knows that we want to get to there, but as a manager, you are focusing on what you can do daily, the game that's coming up. But also, over the last probably 3 weeks, I've also been drip feeding ideas that we can beat our Champions League opponent, because we're going to have 0 time to train for that game. Once we fly, we only get, maybe 2 hours on the pitch, if that. In lead up over the -2, -1. So if anything, I've probably been drip feeding some ideas on how I think we can beat the Red Angels, because we're going to have no time to train for that one. We know Central Coast, we know Victory or Adelaide if we play them in the final next week. So they'll be only fine-tuning little details, and we'll train that next week if and when we're there. If not, next week we'll be fully focused on the Red Angels.